Just a short flashback to my childhood as a gamer. I started playing mostly JRPG games because I only had a Game Boy back then, and these were the most accessible for me. A few years later, we got our second-hand PC, and a friend introduced me to Baldur's Gate 2. To tell you honestly, I didn't like it at first. I was not used to Western RPGs, so having to start the game in a dungeon, I found the game complicated with a whole lot of text to read. So I stopped playing it and probably just gave it a try after a few months. And boy, that's when everything changed. I didn't realize that I could play a game and be immersed in a world so detailed with wonderful characters and places to explore, and a game where your choices matters. So why am I talking about Baldur's Gate 2 when the video is obviously about Dragon Age? So yeah, because I played a lot of games after Baldur's Gate 2, and not one of them gave me that exact feeling that I had when I played Baldur's Gate. So yeah, Dragon Age Origins happened, and it's a role-playing game developed by BioWare, one of the best RPGs ever. Played and completed the game probably 4 times before I had my 5th playthrough, and that's not counting the times I had to reset my progress to create a new character. So the game is so good that even on my 5th playthrough, I can still confidently say that I find the game way better than most modern RPGs out there. And believe me, I've played a lot.
I guess I owe her thanks.
The story is so epic that I hope my summary will give it justice. So yeah, as it sounds, you will have your origin story, one you can select when you create your character. This is just not something you choose and then there's nothing that will happen afterward like what you have in other games, but your origin story here will actually matter, and you will have some dialogue options related to it. The game is about the battle and survival of the different races against the Darkspawns and the Blight. The Darkspawns are mages that were said to be corrupted when they tried to reach the seat of the Maker, and the Maker is like the creator in the Dragon Age games. As for the Blight is when a horde of Darkspawns will attack and be led by an archdemon, and I will leave it at that. So regardless of your origin story, you end up being recruited as a Grey Warden.
It is finished. Welcome.
Where you will be participating in an epic battle right away.
For Ferelden!
So to avoid spoilers, we move on a bit. After the battle, your mission is basically to go and convince the different races to join you in the fight against the Blight for survival. The character creation in the game is still better than most recent RPGs that came out. You have a lot of options to choose, and yeah, you can choose your gender. You can choose from 3 races, which are human, elves, and dwarves, and you can also choose your class. But take note though that some classes are not available in some races. Like the dwarf can't be a mage because it's actually tied to the story, and that you will discover when you play the game. And then take note as well that the origin story that you select, because you have 6, will depend on the race and class that you choose. So you have sliders that you can manipulate to customize the skin, customize the hair, eyes, customize the nose, mouth, jaw, neck, and the portrait. You don't have a portrait here that you can select because your portrait is actually the face of the character that you created. And you also have choices for the voice.
I have lost
How do you do?
Greetings.
Greetings. Charmed, Greetings.
Now you will have a silent main character. These voice options here are basically just voice sets that your character will use when you get into battles.
Enemies approaching.
One's a killed rod.
And you can also change the first name but not the default last name, as this is what a few number of characters will address you. It's not going to be Kusland always. The last name will be based on the race and the class you select. And of course, after you hit next, you will have 5 attribute points to distribute. If you hover your mouse to the different attributes, you can see how they will affect your stats. So that's helpful, but it's not that different to most other games that you've played before. Once you're done distributing the attributes, you will also have to distribute the talent points. The talents that you can see here will depend on the class you choose. There will be shared talents between classes. Like, you know, the rogue and the warriors have the option to choose the dual wield and archery talents, but of course you will also have talents that are locked to a specific class. So after you distribute the talent points, all you have to do is select the difficulty level. If you've watched my first video, you know I always suggest the difficulty that's one step below the most difficult one. So probably if you have an experience with games like this before, go for hard. If you don't, it's probably best to select the normal, because the game can be difficult in some areas, especially if you don't know how to manage the surroundings and the characters that you engage with. After creating your character, you will be starting your origin story, which is really nice and which really sets up the game. So if you have the full game and the DLC and the expansion, you will have, I believe, 14 possible companions. Feel free to correct me on this, but my point is you have a lot of companions to choose from, and all of them are fleshed out and have wonderful dialogue. But it is important to note that your party can only have 4 members at a time. There is an approval system, so if you say or do things that matches a party member's interests, they will like you, which may result to them giving you more of their background story, or possibly romance them, or giving you a bonus stat, or even unlocking a class that you can specialize in. Of course, this approval system matches your companion's belief and background, so finishing a specific quest or choosing a certain dialogue option may mean that you will have plus points on some party members, while you can have a minus on another. But of course, if they don't like you, they may leave you. But the game has a gift system which you can take advantage of. You can basically buy a gift from merchants which you can give to a companion to earn approval points. To make this interesting and more significant, you can't just give any gifts to any companion. There are some that will be a big plus if it interests them, and there are some that will be a big minus if you give them items that they hate. So as far as exploration goes, you will be controlling your 4 characters, moving around. You can zoom in or zoom out, and then you can also control your character using your keyboard or using your mouse. And if you need to go to a different place, you have an overworld map where you can see all the places that you have unlocked, and you just have to click on any of these locations and there will be an indicator that you're traveling to that specific place. Please just take note that sometimes random encounters may happen or important events may take place. As for the combat, well, I did say that I find this game better than most of the recent games that came out. Here is where I will probably have to step back a bit. Don't get me wrong, the combat of this game is still great, and I would actually suggest this to new players because it's not that complex. But there are certainly a lot of recent games that have better combat mechanics. So yes, the combat is a real time with boss. You have your characters with different classes, with skills or spells associated to it. You can play the game real time, or if you can play the game with boss. But the game can be difficult if you try to play it real time, because sometimes there are just a lot of enemies in an encounter. So for spellcasters, you can build them however you want. You can build them as a support, build them as a crowd control specialist, or if you want them as a damage dealer. You also have spell combinations that you can do, like what you have in the Divinity Original Sin games, but not that many. As for the melee characters, you can build them with passive skills where you don't have to keep managing them in combat, Or if you want to be more involved, you can build them with skills that you have to keep activating in combat. Personally, I tried both, but I just prefer building my main character where I have to activate the skills because it's just more fun. The animations just look cool. One thing I didn't like, at least now after playing the more recent games, was your inability to fully do crowd control. Even if you have the right abilities, skills, or spells, I'm not referring to those, but I'm actually referring to the ability of your frontliners to block an area or limit the enemies that will pass through it. They are just not that effective. In more recent games, if you block a path with a character or multiple characters, the enemies will have a hard time passing through because they are engaged on those characters that are defending the path, and when they do, they get hit by severe penalties. In this game, I find that enemies can easily slide through even if you have the skills or abilities for it. So yes, enemies will sometimes just run straight to your archers or mages. And since the mages are really important, you just have to sometimes keep controlling them, running away from the enemies approaching them, which kinda make it look like your mage is playing tag with the enemy. And another thing, which is a long time issue, is that your party members may sometimes, although randomly, stop attacking enemies in the middle of a combat. So you always have to observe them, and sometimes you have to keep manually commanding them. Overall, as long as you don't select the hardest difficulty, you will do fine as long as you know how to manage your surroundings or the number of enemies that you engage with. You don't have to build the perfect characters or make the perfect party. I'm not a very good player in any way myself. I just learn what I need to and build the character and party that are fun to play. So if you're someone like me, then I believe you'll have a pretty good time. Now about the inventory system of the game has no weight limit, so you don't have heavy items or light items, but instead it's the number of items that you can carry that has a limit. So you can increase this number by purchasing backpacks from merchants, which are definitely not cheap at all, especially when you are in the beginning of the game. So yeah, you can't always collect every loot out there. You may have to leave some behind or destroy the items and just choose those that interest you the most. If it's just this, then maybe it's okay, but considering the fact that you also don't have a storage for items in your camp, it's really hard to be a collector in the game. So yeah, that kind of sucks because when you want to save a cool looking armor, you don't have the storage for it. If you have the DLC, you will have a storage or a chest where you can put all items you collected, but unfortunately the storage is on a different location and not in your camp. Anyway, it's a shared inventory and the items are categorized. What I appreciate about this is that you have the options to sort your items by type, name, and date, and especially the date is really useful because you can easily find items that you have recently picked up. You don't have a base that you can slowly develop over time in the main game. It has a camp which you can select on the world map if you need to go to camp. The camp is where you will get to talk to party members, progress relationships. You'll also have a merchant in the camp, and it is also where you can improve weapons and witness some important events. When it comes to leveling up, it's not that different when it comes to other RPG games. You have a target experience that you have to reach, and when you reach that, you gain ability points and skill points that you can distribute to your character. You can gain experience by defeating enemies, completing quests, or finding codex entries. And although you can only have 4 characters at a time in your party, your other companions in the camp will still level up. They will just be a few levels below your main party members. So please take note that although you only have 3 classes to choose from when you start the game, there will actually be more classes that you can specialize on as you progress through the game. As for the quests in the game, you have primary quests, you have side quests, you have mission quests that you can get on quest boards. It goes without saying that the main quest is awesome and the side quests are definitely interesting enough. But the quests that you get in quest boards are like your typical fetch quests where you have to go to a specific area to find something or to kill a monster or to talk to someone. But the good thing is that you don't actually have to do these quest board missions because you have a lot of quests that you can do here. Your choices really matter in this game. So you will have major quests where your decisions will have a major impact to the ending of the game. I love how the quests are organized in this game. It's not main quests and then side quests. The quests are actually arranged per location, so it's easy to see if you still have something to do in an area or if you have to move on to the next one. Being a BioWare game, of course, you will have your companion quests. These quests can be acquired once you gain your companion's trust, and some of these quests are as simple as going to a specific place to talk to a person, and some can be as difficult as killing a very powerful enemy. The graphics when the game was released is hands down awesome, but if you're playing the game, if I somehow managed to convince you to play the game now in 2021, of course, let's not kid ourselves, it's not that good. While I still find the different animation like the character movement, the spells, and the different skills still very competitive to newer games, but one thing you can really notice is that the color of the environment just looks dated. Some areas are just too pixelated as well, even with the highest setting, but that's understandable because the game is like 10 years ago. As for the audio, it's outstanding. I remember when I first played the game and heard the sound of the heavy armored characters moving, it just sounds so realistic. And no, of course, I never saw or heard a real heavy armored person moving around, but the sound just feels so right. Weapon sounds also feels awesome, especially when your characters perform a finishing move animation. And for the spells, to be fair, I find them good enough. The voice acting, I couldn't say that all the voice dialogues in the game were done pretty well, but the main ones are, especially your companions.
Offer. You're going with her? I thought you were joking. What about us? Doesn't what we have mean anything to you?
Holy love of fine cheeses and a minor obsession with my hair. No, that's it. Just the prince thing.
The Antivan Crows send their regards.
Enchantment!
And you'll also get pretty funny banters from companions depending on who you bring.
Unconvincing. If 'tis a competition you wish, a competition you shall have.
You wild folk are very odd and possessive.
I love the audio from the NPCs too, even when the NPCs only deliver one-liners, like the refugees that you see around. They are so good that they really give you the feeling that there is an emergency, that there is a blight out there that is coming, and it just gives you the sense of urgency to act upon it. The soundtrack in this game is one of the best thing that this game has to offer, and definitely one of the best in all games. I especially love Leliana's song, or the soundtrack when you make love to your romantic companion, and yeah, the main battle song as well when you are in the beginning part of the game.
And honor the sacrifice for Ferelden, for the Grey Warden!
All in all, I sincerely believe that this game has aged very well. There are certainly newer games like this, like the Pillars of Eternity games. You have the Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2. You have the Pathfinder, Tyranny, and so on. This is still the game with the most immersive world and story. Of course, it's not going to be the one with the best combat and gameplay, because that throne, hands down, definitely belongs to Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2. But aside from it, I just feel like it has the edge over the other tactical role-playing games, whether that's real-time with boss or, purely turn-based. So this is an awesome game. Definitely one of my top RPG games of all time. It is a good entry point for those who have just started to get interested in RPGs, and it's definitely a must-play for any RPG players who may have missed it. It just has all the ingredients. It has the great story, memorable characters, unforgettable music, good gameplay, and lastly, just an immersive world that you can get lost into. Because at the end of the day, that's all we RPG lovers really ask for, right? So that's all for me. If you had fun watching the video or at least find it informative, please consider supporting me by hitting that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next one.